So since I interviewed Thomas Borgers, who wrote the book, The Great American Betrayal, which everyone can go pick up a copy, pre-order their copy on
Yeah,
publishizer.com.
yeah,
Um,
Parent Plus loans.
Parent Plus loans, big
Mom's your
scam,
guy.
big part of the big scam of student loan debt in this country. Um, Thomas Borgers spent 8 years looking at this issue. Obviously, he respects you very much, by the way. He had nothing but good things to say about you.
Yeah,
Um,
we're both
so,
uh, we're both 60 Minutes alumni.
oh yeah, I know he mentioned that. Yeah, it's funny. So before we met, and I might clip this out, I don't know, but before we met today, like meeting online here today, I wanted to go over, I have this book. This is from when I was doing my PhD, but it's
Oh,
called Trusted Criminals. And
great title.
it is. It's a great. You might even want to pick one up. It's a really good, basically textbook on white collar crime. Um, and it's the chapter that I was going over is governmental crime, state crime, and political white collar crime. So
Hmm.
I'm just going to read this really quickly because this might interest some people. What we here consider governmental crime in the broad sense is not always crime in the narrower legal sense of the term. We must distinguish among those governmental or political actions prohibited by state laws, those defined as criminal by international law, and those regarded as criminal on some other criteria of harmfulness, not necessarily recognized by either the state's laws or international law, right? So this idea of harm is really a key component of understanding white collar crime, because of these issues. So if we concede to the state the exclusive prerogative of defining crime, right? Because the state defines crime, the state laws define crime, judges act out of state law and federal law. But if we concede to the state the exclusive prerogative of defining crime, many harmful activities perpetrated in the name of states or by governmental officials will not be defined as crime, right? So we have to kind of break out of the box, I think, a little bit with student loans and the predatory nature of the system. One of the things Thomas Borgers and I were discussing in our last interview was, kind of to what extent is this crime, right? He's talking about the legal definition of fraud, right? So, how many of these instances that he found in his research do boil down to fitting into that kind of textbook legal definition of fraud, and then gross negligence, which is something else entirely in a legal sense, in the legal, sense of the word. So, what are the elements that we can consider when we may sit down? Hopefully, if there's ever a congressional investigation around this issue, what are the sort of elements that we can discuss that would help us understand the level or the depth or the type of criminality involved,
Fraud, negligence, and omissions. Also, I would add that third element.
Yeah.
Omissions constitute fraud in many instances. So I'll give you one example. Um, the colleges, the Department of Education, the lending companies, never do they ever uh, disclose to students and their families that bankruptcy rights are uniquely stripped from the loans. They will say something like, you can discharge your loans in bankruptcy if you can prove undue hardship. But
Mhm.
they fail to mention that undue hardship is essentially an impossible standard to meet for 199 out of every 200 student loan borrowers.
Yeah.
And they universally never, ever, ever disclose that there are no statutes of limitations, uniquely stripped from federal student loans. Fair debt collection laws have been hugely restricted for federal student loans.
Mhm.
Truth in lending laws do not exist for federal student loans.
Yeah.
State usury laws as well. But just those first three or four, those omissions constitute, I would say, fraud. I would say they are willful
Yeah.
willful omissions. So there is ill intent there. And at the minimum, this is the most heinous, gross neglect that you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And on the fraud issue, straight up fraud, go to any college today and go to a campus tour. And while you're taking your campus tour and they're giving you a slideshow or whatever, ask them what percentage of your students default on their loans, their student loans.
Yeah.
And they will say, oh, our default rate is low. Our default rate is, 4%, they might say.
Sure.
Well, that is a lie. What they are saying, what they are calling the default rate, they're actually giving you the cohort default rate. So this is a very silly, confusing metric that only counts the number of defaults 3 years after people leave school.
Mm-hmm.
So a college's true default rate may be 40%. And that seems to be what the average is for 2004 graduates. 40% is the average. But the school will say, oh, no, our default rate is only 4%. It's not bad at all. That is fraud. That is provable fraud. So, and I know we only have 45 minutes or so for this podcast. So I will hold my tongue, but let me just say, I could talk for hours about other examples of blatant fraud, omissions, and gross neglect that we could talk about.
Has there ever been you've been at this far longer, right, than most people who are now, kind of calling themselves activists in the field or whatever. Oh my God.
I'm actually and officially the first student loan activist in our nation's history.
Yeah. And you wrote the first book, right? So in your tenure at this kind of stuff, the student loan scam, the most oppressive debt in US history, and how we can fight back. That is Alan's book. Alan's been at this longer than anybody in the game. Please go out, read the book. Just read the book. My question, I guess, is since you've been at it, right? So you wrote that, you started writing it in 2008. Yeah, it was right around that financial crisis, blah, blah, blah.
I wrote it before Obama was elected, by the way. People love to blame Obama on this loan scam.
Yes, they do.
Especially lately. And here's a little inside baseball. There's a shadowy group of people that would love to bring back the old style lending program where private banks made the loans and the government guaranteed those loans.
Yeah.
It was a horrible, even more dystopian and confusing and Byzantine than it is today. It was just horrible in every possible way. People would love to bring that back. So we're seeing this new wave of influencers on social media all of a sudden saying, oh, this whole Obama caused this whole thing by federalizing the loan program. We should go back to private banks making the loans. These people are only trying to steal the $110 billion in interest that accrues to federal student loans every year. They're trying to steal that money from the taxpayers. So they blame Obama and they forget everything that happened before Obama took office.
I know they do it with me all the time. They're like, this is Obama's fault. And,
it's just disgusting. It really started. I noticed it starting to happen a lot around 2 months ago. And so I can tell you right now that we'll probably see maybe legislation from the Republicans pretty soon, trying to turn the clock back and go back to the bad old days. So
yeah,
you heard it here first.
Yeah. On top of that, just piggybacking off of that, so there's the Obama blame shift.
Obama was a disaster, but
totally.
Federalizing the loan program was, on balance, It made it a little simpler. It was no benefit for the borrowers. It did nothing good for us, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world to do. I mean, I like the taxpayer. I don't want the taxpayer to get robbed by Wall
Sure.
Street. So,
Yeah.
it wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Right. Um, the other thing that they like to throw out a lot lately, right? This is, I think, part of the propaganda machine around the Department of Education's whole workforce Pell Grant thing, right? So now it's all about the trade schools. So they're like, well, don't waste your time going to university. What you really want to do is go to trade school. And I'm
It's
like, no, you don't, because they're going to steal your money too. They're going to take advantage of you and ride it all the way to the bank. And this is the thing people don't understand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you go to trade school. It doesn't matter if you go to a university. It doesn't matter if you get a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, if you go to grad school. It doesn't matter. The loans are all FAFSA. They're all the same. They all have the same predatory system. They all operate the same way without any consumer protections. You're going to get
that's
effed
exactly right.
over either way, you
And
know?
I would even add to that, Jessica, people who go to trade schools, the lifetime default rate for these 2-year for-profit colleges, of which trade schools are, 52%. It's highest among all categories of colleges.
Yeah.
So trade school students are being wrecked by these loans far worse than other types of students.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole trade school thing is just a bunch of bullshit, pardon my French,
That's okay.
from
Uh,
people who want to dumb down the country
yeah.
and keep the citizens uneducated and desperate.
That's what it is. That's really what it boils down to.
It's a
And
class war. Yeah,
that's
let's
what
be honest.
that's what the Department of Education is up to right now. I'm sorry, but it's true. Um, I don't know, whatever. It is what it is. But my question to you, which I didn't finish for some reason, I can't remember why. I was on a tangent in my
I
mind.
probably interrupted you or
No,
something.
it's okay. Um, okay, my question is, since you've been at this, right, since prior to Obama, since you were writing your book, in this period of time, how many years is that? What are we talking?
22 years.
Okay. In this 22-year period of time, have you ever heard or seen any suggestions getting floated, any intentions within Washington being pushed to initiate a congressional investigation?
Well, it's really interesting that you say that. When I first started student loan justice, the first thing I did was took my research to a really good reporter, Bethany McLean at Fortune magazine. It took about a year, but she wound up publishing a cover story on Sally Mae. And that quickly crescendoed into me being featured top story on 60 Minutes. That's why I said me and Tom Borgers were 60 Minutes alum.
Yeah.
Um, that 60 Minutes story, which featured Elizabeth Warren, by the way, it was her very first splash in the national limelight. Shame on her in subsequent years.
Yeah.
That 60 Minutes episode led to multiple congressional investigations of Sally Mae and of other private student loan companies. Um, in fact, it was the largest scandal in the history of higher education in this country. They uncovered bribery schemes, kickbacks. Uh, they found like 4 or 5 financial aid administrators, including from Ivy League schools like Columbia. They were fired for taking bribes from the student loan companies.
Hmm.
Even a Department of Education official, a very key official who is in charge of what's called the Office of Financial Partners within the Department of Education, he oversaw the colleges and the lenders. He was arrested because he had taken like $100,000 in stock from a private student loan company. So, yeah, these investigations were huge and very important. And they culminated in Ted Kennedy's final piece of student loan related legislation. It's called the Student Loan Sunshine Act of
Hmm.
2007, I believe. Um, So I could go into detail, but I'll just say it was a groundswell, it was groundbreaking. It was a very good thing. But I have to tell you, Jessica, that since then, no meaningful investigations into the conduct of the colleges, of the servicers, no meaningful investigations have come out
Hmm.
and really uncovered anything almost. And I should also add that the media, the higher education media, has completely folded in on itself and become completely subservient to the lending side. So maybe not completely. Every once in a while, we'll see a good article come out. But journalism around this topic has, for all intents and purposes, just gone by the wayside.
Did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guarantee you that many of all the illegal activities that people were caught for back in 2007, many of those persist to this very day. And there's probably many other schemes that have arisen that we will never know about because the media is not reporting it.
Yeah.
They've buried the bad actions so deeply that the public is inaccessible to the public. These people are very smart and they continue to do what they've ever done, just under a far better camouflage today.
Yeah.
But I
Hmm.
will say, we're about to celebrate this nation's semi-quincentennial is officially what it is, our
Yeah.
250-year birthday. And I can tell you, Jessica, that the founding fathers are turning over in their graves. I mean, they are looking down at us and just shaking their head, wondering where the torches and the pitchforks are. The founding fathers fought, many of them, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, others, they were being hurt badly under debt to British banks and merchants and East India Trading Company and other British concerns, friends of the king. When they declared independence, it was as much of a declaration of financial independence, a jubilee, if you will, as it was anything. Most of the people that came to the New World, they came either as indentured servants or sometimes as debtors, prisoners.
Sure.
In fact, the entire state of Georgia was founded uh, by debt prisoners from England.
Huh.
And when after they finally won the Revolutionary War, about 3 years after that, there were violent uprisings because soldiers would come back from the war and find that a bank or a trading company or who knows another concern uh, stole their farm under very vicious debt instruments. So there were uprisings across the eastern seaboard from western Massachusetts down to Georgia. And it was, look up Shay's Rebellion and you can see what it was. It was the Shay's Rebellion. It was this thing that compelled the founders to write a constitution in the first place. And everybody agrees that that's true. And in that constitution, the founding fathers called ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to coin currency,
Yeah.
ahead of the power to build an army and a navy, ahead of the power to create a judiciary, ahead of every right listed in the Bill of Rights, the founding fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws,
Hmm.
aka uniform bankruptcy rights.
Yeah.
And here we are 250 years later. Student loans are the only type of loan that has been uniquely stripped of this fundamental constitutional protection. The founding fathers need us to fight like they did. Hopefully not die, but they fought and died. We at least have to fight. Hopefully not die. We the people have to re-embrace their fight, and we've got to fight. We cannot allow this type of tyranny to take over this country. I think it's very appropriate that on the 250th anniversary of this country, student loan borrowers everywhere should be standing up and speaking out and get rid of all the fear and the intimidation and the discouragement that they feel they're living under. That's not going to keep this country strong. The founders need us to fight, and I hope everybody out there will heed my words.
I don't understand why and Tom Borges actually raised this as a question as well. He was like, why aren't more people standing up and speaking out about this? Because there's millions and millions of victims, right? Again, I'm going to say it again because I say it all the time. I don't think it really sinks into people's, like, the people who aren't student loan debtors or whatever. If
No,
there are
they fail to see the profound importance of this
oh,
abrogation of our rights.
that they fail to see how this piece of the puzzle, right? If we look at the overarching kind of American economy right now and how this tiny piece, which actually it's not so tiny, right? When we zoom out and we look at the amount of debt and how many people are affected by it, I believe this is Washington's biggest secret right now. I believe that this is really truly behind what is really crippling this country and its consumer power. I don't.
It absolutely is. And if I could share my screen for a minute while
Sure.
you're talking,
Yeah.
I'll
I
bring
mean,
something.
think about how many houses, right? So, how many houses could have been purchased by now?
Starting families, buying homes, starting businesses, on and on and on. Debt is a very serious weapon that John
Yeah.
Adams said it best. The best way to conquer and enslave a country, you can do it through the sword, but you can also do it through debt.
Right.
And that second thing is exactly what we're living under now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the image I want to bring up, you said take two steps back. Over half the states now owe more
Go
than
ahead.
their entire state budgets in student loan debt. I just wanted to bring this up.
Mhm.
Uh, this is very, I think, very telling. And I should also say it's often conservatives who wag their finger the most at student loan borrowers. Well, if you look at this graph here, you can see that the worst hurt states, these are states where student loan debt exceeds the entire state budget, which is a huge number.
Mhm.
These are the states that are worst affected. So it's the South, it's, all these red states, which are often actually red states. And I'll give you maybe just one example or a couple examples. So the state of Florida, the largest employer, state of Florida is the Walt Disney World. Well, the Walt Disney World brings around $5 billion in revenue into the state of Florida every year. Well, the Department of Education takes $6 billion in interest, only interest, on federal student loans out of the state of Florida. Um, if you look at South Carolina, all the top five agricultural exports of South Carolina, it's like corn and tobacco and soybean and a couple other crops. You take those top five exports for the state of South Carolina. The Department of Education takes far more interest out of the state of California or state of South Carolina than all those top five crops bring in. So this thing is a beast. And we're talking about interest. We're talking about wealth that was created out of thin air, monopoly money for all intents.
Mhm.
But it becomes very real money that the people of South Carolina have to pay to the Department of Education. So this is hobbling, crippling, enslaving the states. And we could go on forever talking about all the other states. But let me just say that just interest on federal student loans now rivals or exceeds major state industries, like all the lobsters that the lobster industry in Maine produces. The Department of Education takes more interest out of the state every year than lobsters bring in.
That's crazy.
And on and on and on.
Well,
So,
I believe it. I believe it. I think it's Washington's biggest secret. I really do. I'm gonna stand by that. I'm standing by that. I
you're
feel
you're absolutely right. And the thing that's holding us back is I'm going to say cowardice, but really they've been cowed. Student loan borrowers have been cowed into silence. They've been intimidated and shamed. And it is right now, as we speak, leading to horrible outcomes. We're seeing a big spike in suicides. We're seeing people literally declare war and commit murder,
right,
declare war against the federal government and commit murder
right.
because of their student loans. I kid you
Yeah.
not. everybody out there should Google the odd case and terrible, tragic case of Justin Mohn,
Yeah.
Mohn. He sued the Department of Education over his student loans. He lost. He declared war on the federal government and committed murder.
Yeah.
Um, is he sane? Well, obviously not. But these are the sorts of things that are happening right now as we speak
I
in
mean,
this
he
country.
might have been in a better place at some point, right, mentally, and then something, the inability to pay, for instance, might have
Right.
been what flipped the trigger in his life,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
These,
We can talk about a family, the Nelson family in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. They declared bankruptcy because of their student loans. It was 94% of all their debts.
yeah,
They got all the shame of a bankruptcy. They were obviously duped into filing by an unethical bankruptcy attorney, is my best guess.
right.
They got all the shame of a bankruptcy. They got none of the relief. And the parents suicided the entire family. They burned the house down. They killed the kids, killed themselves.
Hmm.
It's the
Yeah.
most horrible outcome you can imagine.
Yeah.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. And it's going to get far, far, far worse, particularly after July 1st, when millions of people are seeing their $50 a month loan plan go up to $900 a month. And that's happening all over the place, everywhere. Um,
Tom, Tom Borgers talked about how a lot of the Parent Plus loan borrowers, right, who can't pay, who've defaulted, are now they're in their elderly years, many of them, he said the overwhelming majority of them are poor, black, and what was it, blue collar, something along those lines. I can't remember the exact words, but
yeah.
they are having their social security checks garnished. And I
or,
said,
or their
how
wages. Yeah.
how are they surviving? And he had no words. He was like, they are literally not taking their medications. They are not eating as much. This is reality for many millions of people in this country.
Yeah.
And I know he specializes in the 8-year research around the Parent Plus loan, kind of older parent borrowers. So that is a unique phenomenon in and of itself. But I know that, I mean, there are plenty of other people, right, who are independent adults, for example, who maybe went to graduate school and are now married. I mean, marriages have been broken up over these kinds of things.
Oh,
All kinds-
absolutely.
I mean, this is something that I believe is eating away, I mean, there
It's
are
a
a lot.
cancer. It is a cancer on this country. And
It's
make no mistake, older people over the age of 35, they now greatly outnumber younger people. This is not a younger person's, I mean, it is a younger person's problem, but it is far more an older person's problem. There are far more people over the age of 50 with student loans than under the age of 25.
yeah.
So all the nonsense we see on social media making fun of these young 20 something people fresh out of college, they are not the face of the student loan problem. It
Yeah.
is more and more people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So
Yeah.
people need to realize you need to get the picture of the young, stupid, blue-haired liberal, avocado toast eating,
Gender
you know,
studies degree. Yeah.
gender studies degree. That's all nonsense. 70% of student loan borrowers in the country are not Democrats.
Right.
They are either independent or Republican. That's 70% of all student loan borrowers.
Yeah.
So you're right. This is the greatest financial scandal in the history of our country. It's far more damaging than the subprime home mortgage crisis. Far, far, far more damaging than the savings and loans crisis. This is ruining lives, and people better wake the fuck up. Pardon my French,
I
but
agree.
this is something that affects everybody, whether they have student loans or not.
It sure
And we are
does.
we are on the cusp of seeing horrific outcomes across the board. I think we'll probably see civil unrest, maybe even by the end of the year.
Yeah.
People are losing. I keep my finger on the pulse of the country, and I can tell you that people are losing their minds like I've never seen before in the 22 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I don't know about you. I don't know about you, where you live, what you see, but where I'm at, I'm in a big city. Um, I have noticed a lot of businesses going out of business lately. Even big major resellers are clearancing a lot out. Like they are cutting way back on staff, they're cutting way back on goods. But prices, on the other hand, continue to rise. This equation is not going to bode well for anybody. I believe that Washington is well aware of what's happening, and this inability for the elected officials in power to step up to the plate and do what's necessary to actually help the people of this country is eating away at the moral fabric of the Constitution, of what we claim to stand for, right? This is anti-American what's happening to the
Yeah,
people.
you know, there's the paper Constitution which sits in Constitution Hall in Washington D.C., but there's also the actual Constitution of the people of this country.
Yeah.
Our internal sociological, the people's Constitution is being eroded at every step in the way, and there's no better example of that than this student loan scam, where the government
Mhm.
and the I call them the money changers. You can call them whatever they want, but the Wall Street lending people um, have infected our federal government, and they
Mhm.
have turned what was supposed to be a good thing, the student loan program to get people educated, they have turned it into a wealth extraction mechanism to suck the life out of this country.
Yep.
And, you know, I put my money on the citizens, on the people, far before I would bet on the government. The government is not strong. The collective constitution, the will of the people, is far, far, far stronger than the 10, 20,000 or so people who have rigged this federal student loan scam against the citizens. So I would only tell, if we're talking politics, I would only say that if I were a Republican, I would be scrambling to put together legislation which, at a minimum, returned constitutional bankruptcy rights as they exist for every other type of loan. Uh, I would be crafting that bill, and I would get it on hot rails, and I would hope to pass it before the midterms.
Mhm.
Because right now the Republicans are getting all the discredit for what's happened. Maybe fair, maybe unfair, probably a little bit unfair. Um, Although the Republicans are just evil, and so I will shed not a tear to see them almost extinguished in the midterms because of the student loan program. You know, 43 million people who are losing sleep at night over their student loans, they vote. And 70% of them are either Republicans or independents. And everything that Donald Trump has done over the second term on student loans has been a hot, scorching ice pick in the eyeball of student loan borrowers. So I would strongly suggest that if the Republicans want to avoid evisceration in the midterms, they return bankruptcy to the loans. And I would say also they should probably put in a clawback, which makes the wealthiest, you know, the trust fund colleges, the hedge fund colleges, the Harvards, et cetera, puts them on the hook to reimburse the federal government for discharges. You know, $6 billion is about what the annual discharges in bankruptcy would be. Harvard's endowment will grow by over $6 billion this year. So just Harvard alone could pay for the bankruptcy discharges of the entire country and still grow their endowment by a little bit. That's what the Republicans want to do. And, you know, this is going to be a really key question for the Republicans, is keeping this loan, and we know it's far more important than it's being let on.
Mhm.
But the question is this loan scam so important to the Republicans that they are willing to lose everything to keep it going? We'll see. We
Right.
will see come November whether they get this done or not. We're pushing very hard. I'm guardedly hopeful, There's some good people I know, Republicans in Congress, that are looking very seriously at this. So it remains to be seen. But the next 6 months will be very, very telling.
Yeah.
Actually, 5 months.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you again, Alan, for joining me on Rad Futures.
Happy to do it. And happy 4th of July to everybody if we don't meet before then.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Let's meet again sometime soon. We'll catch up and discuss hopefully some good news.
All right. And follow Rad Futures. Subscribe to Rad Futures. This is where it's at right here if you want the truth.
Thank you.